Hello Indie Game fan, some of you might not know this but I read all the comments, so after covering my personal games of the year, some hidden gems and the best of the rest, here are some of your picks of awesome indie games from 2022, beginning with Freedom Planet 2, the sequel to perhaps the best commercial Sonic fan game that was tremendously successful, but this sequel was long in development and did not disappoint. The multiple playable characters are varied and neat, with fun gotta go fast action as well, and is relatively underrated all things considered. One of the most successful simulation and adventure games last year was Strange Horticulture, joining an increasing number of potion brewing or alchemist simulators, where you run a local plant store with the ability to discover and cultivate new plants and then to give them to your customers that will affect the story. It's that kind of indirect narrative choose-your-own adventure game where the way that the narrative pieces together is worth a look. I love my Metroidvanias and have covered plenty of them in the previous 3 Game of the Year videos, but did not have space for Astronite, a 1-bit mini Metroidvania that is pretty neat and should not be missed. You play as a spaceman returning to your home planet to reclaim it from strange creatures, with just a tightly designed title that is fun for a couple of hours.
I shall not be afraid of the terror in the night.
I'm not a horror game person, so I have to rely on you to point out good ones, where Faith the Unholy Trinity is one such title, being even more impressive since it has a very throwback 8-bit look that goes back to the 1980s. I don't have particular nostalgia for this era of games, but people do seem to love it, where you play as a young priest struggling with demons in quite a literal fashion, where it is once again a new blood interactive joint who has established themselves in the boomer shooter and retro titles niche. I do, of course, also have to give mention to DRAINUS, one of the best shoot-'em ups, coming to us from one of my favourite developers in Team Ladybug, best known for Metroidvanias such as Touhou Lunar Nights. This sports their signature pixel art look and is gorgeous, with a vibe that would not be out of place on something like the Sega Genesis. The main mechanic here is to absorb enemy projectiles and to use it to fuel your weapons, not exactly the most novel of ideas, but well executed here and will be for fans of the genre. As mentioned in the Hidden Gems video, a list like this is where you would expect to find weirder and more unique adventure games, one of which is Betrayal at Club Low, a game that is kind of difficult to describe since it has both RPG and dice rolling mechanics, as well as a narrative to tell. you're infiltrating a nightclub on a rescue mission with one of the weirdest and strangest looks of the year, where based on your recommendations is definitely one of interest. There have been a number of interesting base building strategy titles with deck building elements, where a title that you should certainly keep an eye on is Orcs, one where you're defending against the green skin hordes by expanding your kingdom to gather resources, but not too much so as to spread your defenses too thin. I love the art style here, where the strategy portion is fun as well, so if you love titles like They Are Billions or Retropolis, do give this a play. I have a soft spot for the original McPixel since I have a history with this title, being one of the first indie games that I played, which gave me an appreciation for smaller titles, which is why McPixel 3 makes the list. This released more than 10 years after the original, but the developer has cheekily skipped over the second entry to make this title. It is more of the same as compared to the first game, but puts our hero in a new set of wacky circumstances, which is just surreal and weird and interesting as a result. A title that can be considered a hidden gem is Nightmare of Decay, one that released in May 2022 and is a first-person action horror title that pays tribute to the original Resident Evil. To be honest, I always skip over games like this since I always come across a whole bunch of games that look like this when browsing new releases every week, with the majority of them being rubbish, but I'm happy that this managed to stand out, where it's at a low price as well and is probably worth your time. From the moment this game was shown off, immediate comparisons were made to Pikmin, where Tinykin does share many similar elements and is underrated all things considered. You are shrunk down in size and have to enlist the help of these adorable Tinykin to solve puzzles in order to get back to your normal size and to return to your home planet. The Honey, I Shrunk the Kids typesetting is always neat, where this game takes place within the confines of a regular home, where the 3D platforming is good as well. One of the most successful titles of the year is Potionomics, a nice mix of shopkeeping simulation and visual novel, where you take over your uncle's potion shop and have to work to pay off a huge debt. As such, it's a similar premise to something like Reciteer and Items Shop's Tale, but does have a fantastic modern look here. You're also able to hire adventurers to get ingredients, develop relationships with other vendors in town, and even take part in competitions, being a good game not to be missed.
Charles! I don't want to die!
From the moment Choo-Choo Charles hit mainstream awareness, it was earmarked for success and seems to have done tremendously well for the developer, where it's an action horror title that is very intense. You're exploring a small open-world island, having to help the locals in order to get parts and upgrades for your train, all as you attempt to destroy the titular spider train. The design of Charles is probably one of the main reasons to the success of this game, since Nightmare Thomas the Tank Engine is a difficult visual to forget, and add to that an intense gameplay loop and you got yourself a winner.
Now that you have those rockets and my launcher, all you need is a target.
Unless you want that train of yours to end up in my junkyard, you better get some upgrades.
I have to thank the commenters that informed me of the release of Fear and Hunger 2 Termina, a very grimdark turn-based RPG that is the sequel to a game from 2018, where people don't really know about these games since the theme is so grim that the developer voluntarily marked it as adult only due to the violence in this game. It is a turn-based RPG with survival horror elements where there is a dismemberment system built into the combat, being similar to something like Lisa the Painful in that regard. It does appear to be an RPG Maker title as well, but the developer has fully wrangled that engine to make this deeply disturbing title which should be of interest to horror game fans. Moving on to something a little more lighthearted, Super Kiwi 64 is a very neat little 3D platformer, being a throwback to the golden age of such games from the late 90s, exemplified by games on the Nintendo 64. This developer has been making quite a number of such retro throwbacks, so their other games are worth a look as well, but this is about as classic as it can get in terms of the collectathon gameplay, with some good feeling locomotion and platforming as well. It was a good year for cozy and
Farm Simulation RPG
games, where a good release out of early access is Kynseed, one that has a fairy tale setting and theme which sets it apart from other titles. In addition to the farming, fishing, crafting and relationship systems, this does allow you to play as successive generations of family members, which is their unique selling point. It spent quite a number of years in early access and has changed considerably through that, where it was for the better in my opinion, but yet is still a little rough around the edges, but the theme and mechanics are interesting nonetheless. Let's kick off the top 10 with Dread Delusion, a first-person open-world RPG with some immersive sim elements, with a very unique PS1-era polygonal look. This has been compared to Morrowind, but of course on a much smaller scale, but it is still impressive work, being worth picking up even while in early access, or you could just wait until it's done. Another title that really exploded in popularity as well is Dave the Diver, an underwater action exploration title that is crossed with a management sim where you run a sushi restaurant. You're hunting fish in the day and then serving these creatures at night, where making more money enables you to get upgrades to dive deeper into the ocean, but the gameplay loop is very compelling and could be one of the best after it's done with early access. Another early access title that a number of you have mentioned is Zero Civet, a top-down pixel art extraction shooter where exploring a post-apocalyptic wasteland, venturing out to scavenge for resources and then returning to your home base to craft upgrades, customize your weapons and to venture out again. This has plenty of compelling gameplay loops from quests, the upgrade systems, crafting systems and more, where people have been making comparisons to Escape from Tarkov, which, if you do not know, is one of the most hardcore gaming experiences out there, so to see this in a top-down pixel art form is neat if first-person shooters are not your kind of game. Yet another early access title of interest is Cosmotier Starship Architect and Commander, where I did mention in my preview of this in Indie Gaming this week that it had the potential to be huge, and indeed it has blown up in popularity as well. This is a freeform sandbox simulation title where you're able to build your own custom starship, which you can command to explore the galaxy, ensuring that the internal workings of the ship function as you fend off enemies on all sides. People do love their sandbox titles, since there is the potential for endless possibilities, which seems to have been delivered here, with only more to come in early access. The The fifth early access title in a row is Tiny Rogues, one that stands out primarily because it's more of a traditional arena-based action roguelike, like The Binding of Isaac, in a year where everyone was making Vampire Survivors clones. While I'm not a fan of fake scan lines in general, it has a minimalist but effective 8-bit pixel art look, but where there is plenty of variety in terms of playable characters, weapons, upgrades, potions, skills, synergies, and possible builds as well, and it's just an excellent title at a low price, making this a no-brainer. A hidden gem that people are sleeping on is Tiny Folks, a minimalist pixel art turn-based RPG that has more than a little in common with Darkest Dungeon. You are recruiting and training the townsfolk, assembling a party to venture out into the wilderness to take on monsters, with plenty of progression systems such as town upgrading to keep you playing, where it's a more streamlined and less punishing version of the indie game classic and is great because of that. A smaller roguelike platformer that is a gem as well is Re-Vita, one that released out of early access last year and is certainly worth a play. This looks like a regular side-scrolling roguelike platformer, but does have some twin-stick shooter influences. We are able to synergize upgrades and weapons, which can result in some impressive screen-filling attacks. There isn't too much of a story, but at least there is one. We are sending a clock tower in search of your lost memories, and does have great pixel art as well. Probably the most successful
Farm Simulation RPG.
of the year is Coral Island, one that hit many of the same notes as the greats like Stardew Valley, only with more realistic characters, 3D graphics, and an ecological theme. In addition to the farming, mining, fishing, crafting, and relationship systems, you're also able to dive into the oceans to clean up pollution. It's an impressive piece of work with over 70 characters in the game. We can certainly see the inspiration of Stardew Valleys and decades of farming sims in this game, and it looks to get better as the months go along. When it comes to boomer shooters, it doesn't get much better than Turbo Overkill, being published by Apogee Entertainment, who, let's just say, has history with this genre. It's about as action-packed as it can get, where you play as an anti-hero who's described as half metal, half human, and all murder machine. It has features and weapons that are right out of an 80s action movie, from a chainsaw leg to a chainsaw bike, dual-wielding automatic weapons, and hidden armed rockets, where our protagonist really does have an entire arsenal at his disposal as he returns to his hometown to take on a rogue AI. Again, this is an early access title and seems to be following the episodic model established by its predecessors and will be for fans of the genre. I do want to give a special mention to this 3D platformer as well, since it seems to be heavily inspired by Sonic and released in the same week as Sonic Frontiers, where Lunistus has defied the odds and is a great throwback to the PS1 era of such games. You can watch this video for more of the best of 2022.